This is the Tom Anderson Show on the Talk of the Valley, KVNT, 92.5 FM and 1020 AM, and on Hot Talk, KOAN 95.1 FM and 1080 AM. From 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday, join Tom for what matters to Alaskans. Good morning, Alaska. Here's Tom Anderson.
(8:06 a.m., June 26th, Tom Anderson Show, folks. Welcome back. It's Friday, and with all the tragedies occurring with this plane crash in Ketchikan and with the 3 different continent terrorist acts, locally here, there's a tragedy that has affected someone in particular to the deepest level of grief, and that's Terria Walters. And we're talking to her today, this hour, an exclusive radio interview. She agreed to come on, and I tell you, Terria, you have a lot of courage. Your son, Christopher, this week was found in Big Lake, and it appears to be murder, and I know you've gone through hell, and I know that even coming here, you were a little hesitant because it's so new and it's so fresh, but I welcome you, and I appreciate your courage, and I think the people listening feel the same way.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Your son, let's talk about him, and we can get into the case in a second here, but where was your son born, and how old is he? And let's talk about him first, Christopher, so people understand how wonderful of a guy he was and how traumatic the loss is to you and your family and friends.
My son was 23, and he was born in Palmer, Alaska, in the old hospital, which is right down the streets from where I work. And
where do you work? You work at a very popular spot?
Palmer City O House. I am the bar manager over there.
Yep.
And we ended up moving to Anchorage when he was a baby and staying in a trailer court in Anchorage. And then he went to school, and then eventually we kind of went back and forth between Anchorage to the Valley. I basically preferred being in the Valley because it's less, congested. So we came back out to the Valley when he was a teenager.
So he, for the most part, considered himself a Valley kid, a Matsu kid. Did he go to school out here?
Absolutely. He actually graduated high school at Wasilla High in 2010.
Awesome.
And he was prom king with his high school sweetheart with, her name is Tosca.
Wow. Well, oh my gosh, they just handed me a photo of that prom king.
Yeah. He had really good grades, had great sense of humor. He was a skateboarder. He always hung out at the skate park. Last night I was going through some of his things, and I found some photos that I was really, really happy to find of him and Tosca and some of his friends and people, times that he was at the skate park.
We've talked about social media and how profound it can be in a good way and sometimes in a bad way. I think for you and for this case, it can be profoundly good. And Optima, my firm, has agreed to help you get that set up. And you've brought some photos and some really, really remarkable photos because it shows his transition from a little boy to a man and a lot of the accolades and things, accomplishments he's done, you've memorialized in photos. With your son living here, the dark side of Matsu, and I report on it all the time, is the criminal element and drug abuse and bad choices. And we're all human and we all make mistakes, but sometimes there's that domino effect or that trickle. And, before we started, you said, Tom, I've been there, I've done that. And one of the biggest reasons I came to this interview today on the Tom Anderson Show is to talk about why rehab is important, why treatment is important versus just incarceration and cases and criminality. Do you think that your son saw that in his teens? Do you think that there are a lot of people out here in the Valley that are either in the drug trade or selling, and not that you would know it firsthand, but do you think that it's pervasive out here?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It is a huge problem. Because I am in recovery 10 years and had an addiction issue, I see it. I recognize that I could just look at somebody and tell if they're using drugs. It doesn't take rocket science.
Sure.
I always tell people, I didn't fall off the turnip truck yesterday. I know what you're doing and I can see it, can't hide it from me.
Especially in the hospitality industry, you probably see it there more than you'd like.
Well, yeah, sometimes.
And I don't mean you're serving someone intoxicated, but I mean, I'm sure people come in and have water and you're like, boy, that something's wrong with that person. So your son, growing up in high school, guy like me in the news, constantly reporting it, almost nonsensically. It's every single day, mostly males, this guy, that guy. I see it in stores. I see how people act. I'm no expert, but I think I probably have somewhat of your intuition where it's like that person's loaded on whatever the case may be. Did your son see this often?
Yeah.
Did he tell you it? I mean, was it hard for him to befriend people that weren't somewhat affiliated in that world?
Well, yeah, whenever he was working and stuff, he would come to me and be like, Mom, I think that they're using, and there wasn't.
Did he work there with you?
He worked at the Palmer City Ale House up until February of this year. He was a server there, and everybody loved him. He was just, people hit, actually, one of the ladies, and it just stuck with him, called him the gentle giant.
Wow.
Because he was just so chill and, whenever he was shy and quiet, had a great personality and a sense of humor. You could not. He was just a funny guy.
Kind of an inherent entertainer and charismatic.
Very.
You don't get prom king if you're not full of charisma. You growing up out here for him in his teens, and then you living out here. Would you say that Matsu is different? You lived in Anchorage too, in terms of the climate and kind of the dark side, or would you say it's comparable to Anchorage? Because to me, it seems like looking at what happened to your son and the tragedy of this, Matsu, I don't know how to label it, but it's a beautiful place and it's also a scary place because of it's not so dense and it's spread out. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Just because I've been on that side of the fence.
On the dark side of it.
Yes. I personally know the mindset of somebody that is in their addiction, and I know that paranoia can set in. I know that with the heroin epidemic that's going on, I know that people actually...
Statewide, by the way, the heroin epidemic's going on.
It's so terrible.
And what are the manifestations of that? Did you ever use heroin? And if so, what is that? Then you can speak firsthand. What does that addiction induce in someone?
Heroin is a lot like... when somebody asks me about it, the best description I can say is when you get addicted to it, you need to have it every single day to not get sick. You have to have it to function.
And you'll do anything to not get sick at some point.
Yes, and if you don't have it, the best description I can give when you get sick is like taking gasoline and dumping it on yourself and setting yourself on fire. That's what it reminded me of whenever I would get sick.
We're going to come back here. Hold the thought. Terria Walters and her son Christopher. That's the topic today. We'll take your calls, folks. It's the Tom Anderson Show. This is an important show. Stay with us.
This is the Tom Anderson Show on the Talk of the Valley, KVNT 92.5 FM and 1020 AM, and on Hot Talk, KOAN 95.1 FM and 1080 AM. Want to join the conversation? In the Valley, dial 357-5868. In Anchorage, 569-1080. Good morning, Alaska. Here's Tom Anderson.
We are back and talking with Terria Walters, who lost her son this week, Christopher. Chris was found, and it's hard to talk about. I tell you, when you're staring at a mother, I don't enjoy this any more than you probably enjoy listening, but I think there's an intriguing factor, and intriguing in this sense. We can catch the person who did this with your calls. We can find out what happened. We can look at kind of the foundations of this, and And she's agreed to do that. And I think that's courageous on her part. And, typically on these talk shows, her friend is here, we're talking on the break and we don't just stare at each other. We're like, what about this? What about that? And it gets a little emotional. And folks, if you want to call in, if you want to give her encouragement, you're welcome to 357-5868 in the Valley, 357-5868 in the Valley, 569-1080 in Anchorage. If you have questions, general questions, if you have a comment, maybe you're a recovering addict and you can feel her pain. There's some solidarity here. Maybe you've lost someone. I don't want you to monopolize the interview, but I definitely would encourage your calls. Also, if you want to Facebook and let us know you have a question, you know that it's Tom Anderson Show. Terria, when I look at the background and you've been there 10 years plus recovering and you're in your sobriety, you talked about a transitional home. So you're in the business. You're kind of a professional. You're an expert. You've seen it. And then we'll talk about Christopher and what you think might have happened in his sobriety or lack thereof. What do you have in Anchorage with your partner?
I have a program called, it's a faith-based program through Fallen Up Ministries that I started, and the house is called the Damascus House. It is in Anchorage, and I started this with a friend of mine named Lane, who owns the building. He contacted me and asked me, I would really like to know about a way to do some outreach. And so I had a meeting with him and I said, hey, this is my idea. And he said, I'm giving you full reign. Do what you need to do. So what I did was I opened up a transitional house for people coming out of prison, drug treatment, and off the streets that suffer from addiction issues, that want to get their life back, that are coming out of prison, that don't have a place to go, that need housing.
It's a lonely time when you come out and you're like, I've already served. I've already been, quote, punished. Now it's even worse because I don't have, 3 hots and a cot anymore.
Right. Absolutely. And I do have a lot of individuals that come out that don't have anybody. Some of them come with their little box and I've actually, out of my own pocket, have taken people to the store and gotten them groceries because they don't have anybody to come, either because their family's in addiction, they don't want to go back to that, or they have no support at all. A lot of people, society has taken a stand that, not everybody's like this, but a lot of people have taken a stand of, addicts are just the scum of the earth, that they don't matter. I've seen on
that you can't rehabilitate them, that they're
right.
less than the rest, and that they don't deserve that second or third chance, which all of us have made mistakes.
Right. Well, my take on it, and I've seen it in a lot of crime discussions and I've gotten defensive on behalf of people that suffer from addiction, because what I want people to understand is we are not our addictions. When somebody's under the influence of their addiction, they are not thinking straight and they are not making choices based on, who they really are inside. They are making decisions based on their addict mind.
A manipulated mind because of chemicals or the desire for those.
Right, absolutely, because I did it myself. I made poor decisions while I was in my addiction.
And what did you, let's just talk about that. So you say heroin. I can't even imagine that, but I've talked to people who've been addicts and they're like, you can imagine pretty soon you're injecting that all over your body. And I'm like, oh my God, it gives me the weebie-jeebies. And they're like, you wouldn't have the weebie-jeebies if you're addicted, because you need that so desperately to get rid of the pain. And in your case, have you been addicted to a bunch of drugs, or was it just that?
It was mostly heroin, but then I wanted so badly. I hated being an addict. I hated.
You're so smart, you're beautiful, smart, intelligent. Your friend, the same. You guys are you've got that kind of that soul energy. The minute you walked in, just kind of brightened the room. And I'm imagining you couldn't have been like, yeah, pumping the air, like, I just don't care. This is awesome being an addict. I love it. I can't imagine anybody liking that, especially people with some star power like you. You must have been miserable.
I was so miserable. I was stuck in my shell. And not just that, I would switch from one drug to another, and eventually it caught up to me. And to this day, I thank the Alaska State Trooper Matsu Drug Unit for arresting me. I actually called down when I got out of prison. I said, "Thank you, you saved my life."
State troopers are amazing, and my dad is a retired colonel, and I'm very law enforcement friendly on this show, and I'm very appreciative of them. Today I drove into the studio with a trooper behind me. That doesn't thrill me because it's like, oh, don't pull me over. I don't want to be late. Do I have all my lights working? I mean, I don't always love law enforcement, but I say that in a kind way. So you thank them. Do you work with them with regard to your program in Anchorage, or there really isn't at that stage, they're not involved?
Well, I do get a lot of referrals from law enforcement. It's not always necessarily police officers.
Sure.
But I get referrals,
corrections or whatever.
Corrections and stuff, and I talk to POs, and I do my best to get these individuals housed and give them a place to live.
Your son, he was aware of your inclination, your advocacy to be drug-free. He had his own troubles, and let's talk about him to that end. When you read about a fatality, wear the hat of just the common citizen. Your husband, or your son is a good-looking kid, very smart, very, very popular, but and you have tattoos with tattoos, hat on backwards. I read some comments on another blog where someone's like, whoa, that guy looks like he might be in drugs. Do you get sick of those stereotypes, or do you think that fits the drug world?
No, not everybody that has tattoos does drugs.
And vice versa.
Right. My son, I want everybody to know that my son had a huge, huge heart. He was so kind and loving, and regardless of the choices that he had made in his past, he did struggle with addiction issues.
And what was his choice of drug? Or were you aware? Maybe he didn't say, "Hey, Mom, guess what? Today I used." I assume kids don't do that normally.
Well, I know that in February he was dating this girl, and he like I said, he was working at Palmer City Ale House for a year, and he was doing so well. And then he started dating this girl.
This was the beginning of this year, January, February timeframe, coming into spring.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, just everything changed when he got around this girl in it. And he started, I could see in his face, his whole countenance changed. And I confronted him and I said, "Look, I know something's going on." I looked right at him.
And he lived with you.
Yeah.
So you could really see him. I mean, you saw him in terms of intimate times where you can tell someone's emotions and personality.
He lived with me and he worked with me. So I saw it, and I said, "I know that something's going on." I said, "You need to reel it in." I said, "If you have an issue, you need to let me know, because I will help you, and you know that I will help you." He eventually ended up getting let go over at the Palmer City Ale House due to his addiction.
Did you do that, or did the owner? That must have been difficult. I mean, because I've been there. I've worked in a family business where my brother and I worked there, and if we ever did something wrong, the owners are our parents. So it's like, do we fire our kids or not? We got passes. Well, that's tough, isn't it?
Well, I didn't let him go, but I did tell my boss. I said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I know this is business." I said, I know that my son's behavior has changed, and I said, "I will not hold it against you if you end up firing him, because I understand." And so eventually my son ended up getting let go, and then he still stayed at home.
And still with the girl.
And he was still with the girl, and then eventually they ended up breaking up, but he still I suspect he was still using. So I ended up kicking him out of my house.
What was he using, do you think?
Opiates, pills, whatever. And then I believe that it transitioned into heroin.
Do you think drug addiction can be genetic?
I believe that it can be. This is what I believe. Addiction it picks anybody. It doesn't matter if you're.
Everybody's susceptible.
Everybody is
ethnicity,
susceptible.
age, whatever the case may be.
I have known people that have been senators. I've known police officers. I've known many, many people that have suffered from addiction issues, whether it be alcohol, heroin, cocaine, meth, pills. takes anybody down.
I worked for a criminal defense attorney in Minneapolis, and I won't give his name, but we represented the Minnesota Vikings on many cases, and we were dealing with a huge drug issue, marijuana, massive. And we walk into his colleague's office, and here the three of them are smoking pot, the lawyers on the case. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm a law student thinking, I guess everybody's susceptible to that, not just the Minnesota Viking player.
Yeah. Eventually, my son ended up getting in trouble, and he got arrested for some felony charges, which eventually were dropped because of, some technicalities and lack of evidence.
And so your point is, you love him. He was a wonderful kid, but he made mistakes, and he wasn't an evil guy, and he wasn't a bad guy.
No.
But your point is, he was susceptible like many people listening are. And I know a lot of his friends are listening. Folks, we're going to go to a break. We have 2 more segments with Terria, and we want to talk about this case, and we want to specifically talk about if you know something. You can call in 357-5868 if you know anything, or 569-1080 in Anchorage. Tom Anderson Show. Stay with us.
This is the Tom Anderson Show on the Talk of the Valley, KVNT 92.5 FM and 1020 AM, and on Hot Talk, KOAN 95.1 FM and 1080 AM. Want to join the conversation? In the Valley, dial 357-5868. In Anchorage, 569-1080. Good morning, Alaska. Here's Tom Anderson.
We are back. It's June 26th, Friday, 2015. It's the exclusive Terria Walters interview, and no doubt when she talks about beating her addictions, when she talks about her successes, very much so in the community, in her profession, she got a great family. I would love to interview her on many things that she is really remarkable on. She's a remarkable, dynamic lady, a great Alaskan. But instead, we have to interview about her son, Christopher Seaman, who was murdered. And you say murdered, was this far away? No, right here in Mat-Su, right in our neck of the woods, maybe near your home. Do you live near Big Lake? Terria, I know it's painful, and I know that you said, I can do this. Let's talk about what happened. First of all, where was his car found? Was it his car, and who found it? Do you know the details of that? Generally, I know first talk about at least missing. He didn't call you for 2 days, correct? Monday, Tuesday, because I saw your Facebook posts. You're right. A friend on Facebook. We didn't know each other well other than texting, as Facebook often, unites people when they don't know each other. But I saw that first and foremost.
I believe, first of all, he left Monday morning and said, "Bye, Mom, I love you," and he was on his way out the door. And he told me he was going to work. And when and because I had 700 Club coming on Tuesday, I said, "Hey, can you make sure that you come back and help me tidy up the house? Let's split the chores so that, whenever they get here, the house is nice and neat, and we can make sure that my interview with 700 Club will be."
You're talking good. About National 700 Club.
Yes.
Wow.
And I ended up going to work, and I got home, and my son wasn't there. And this is probably like around 11 or so.
This was 5 days ago, 4.5 days ago on Monday.
On Monday night. And I knew, as a mother, that feeling, I just knew something wasn't right. And I was like, why isn't my son home? So I called his phone, and it was off. And instantly I was like, something's not right. My son's phone's not on. Okay, well, maybe he spent the night at the job site and his battery is dead. So I texted him. I said, "Hey, as soon as you turn on your phone, please call me so that I know that you're okay."
Where was his job site? He didn't work at the restaurant anymore.
No,
okay.
He did not tell me. I had no idea. But it was just recently I was told he was hired by... He was doing working for a fence company, because before that he was roofing, and then he ended up getting sunburnt. So he went and said, "Oh, I got another job that pays more, 20 something an hour, fencing." And I was like, "Okay, well, good. I'm proud of you." And so he ended up not answering his phone, and I went to sleep, and I woke up. I couldn't sleep. I woke up around 7 something in the morning, And I called his phone again.
Tuesday morning.
Yes.
Now he's not home and he lives with you and you're close, and it's like, now this is very odd. And he's got a smartphone. You text, you call, you keep in contact.
My son, one way or another, would always respond to my text messages. Even if it was an hour or two, he would say, "Hey mom, I'm fine. Don't worry." Because he knows I was like, anytime that you don't respond, that makes me worry. And
so this was the first time this has ever happened of this length.
Yes, absolutely. And so I knew something wasn't right. And again, 700 Club was on their way, and they showed up at my house.
Huge national interview.
Right. And so I was doing the interview, and during my interview, my stomach is just turning. And so I ended up calling his phone all through the day. And come around 5 o'clock, I was in Anchorage at the Damascus house
on Tuesday,
doing part of the interview there, and I ended up calling him around 5 something again, all through the day, and I called my friend Jose, who I bounce a lot of things off of, and I said something's not right. My son's not answering his phone. I got in my truck and I started driving home, which it was into the valley. And there was a traffic jam, so I called the Palmer Police Department, and I said, "Hey, my son is missing. He's not answering his phone." So I said, "Something's not right." So they took an interview over the phone. They went to go do a check over at the house, and I said, "If his car's not there, he's not there. His car was still not there." And
is that when you did the social media effort on Facebook?
Yes, and I went to the Palmer Police, and I made sure that I posted my concerns. And then I went to actually showed up at the Palmer Police Department, made a report. I was there about 45 minutes. I went home. And
you live in Palmer because this fatality was at Big Lake, but you don't live in Big Lake, do you?
No.
This wasn't like it was near your house.
Right, absolutely. And I ended up going, laying in my bed. My friend, I actually called my friend and I was talking to him on the phone, and I eventually started falling asleep while he's talking to me on the phone. I had him on speaker, and I woke up at 2 something in the morning,
early Wednesday morning,
with a phone call. Wednesday morning. My phone was ringing, and the ringer was off, but I still heard the buzzing, so I answered, and it was a state trooper outside my door. So I opened the door, and he said, "Can I come in?" And I said, "Sure." He sat down, and he said, "Can you please tell me what you told the Palmer Police, about your son?" And so I told him everything that I told the Palmer Police. And then they said, "I just want to let you know, we did find your son's car." And I said, "Did you find my son?" And he said, "Yes. He's deceased." And I just lost it. I just completely lost it. I was just totally devastated. I've never felt this much pain in my life. It's like really surreal.
This was 2 days ago.
Yeah. Yes. And it seems like it still doesn't, I can't be alone. I'll just tell you that. And I have a lot of people supporting me that are coming around me, but I just want to make it clear, regardless of somebody's choices or what my son has done, this is my child. I gave birth to him. I watched him grow up. He was my everything. I gave birth to him. I nursed him. I fed him. I watched him grow. And he's been in my life for 23 years. And no matter, even when I was making bad decisions, my son loved me. He never would say anything bad about me. He'd still support me. And we've always done that with each other. And I'm so devastated over this whole situation because my son did not deserve this. I don't care what anybody has done. Nobody deserves to be murdered. Nobody. And these individuals that did this to my son need to be held accountable. They need to come forward, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you are listening, you will be caught, because I am not going to stop. I am not going to stop until you are arrested and brought to justice. So you might as well just give yourself up now, because you're going to get caught.
And conspiracy laws suggest that if someone, at least in the cases I've worked on with Wayne Anthony Ross and others, when I was right out of law school, there are serious consequences if someone knows and doesn't say anything. and the law enforcement finds out that you knew and didn't tell law enforcement. So if someone knows anything about this, doesn't have to be the perpetrator, the odds of the person who murdered your son coming forward because of this show are low unless they have a conscience and they want to go to heaven if they believe in God. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, do you think that law enforcement, you don't have to give names, do you think they know who did this? Are there investigations ongoing? We don't have to get into the details. I don't want to cloud those, but, or is it a completely anonymous, nobody knows, mysterious case?
They have leads, and I also have been getting messages, and people have been talking to me. Social media is big, and eventually
it's solved many a case nationally.
Absolutely. And so I will just say, I can't get into details, but there are things in the works, and I really, because I don't want to jeopardize the case.
Of course not.
I don't.
That's the good news, that the things are being investigated, and almost always, especially when it comes to the Alaska State Troopers, they are so professional, and their success rate is profound at a national level. You're in good hands.
Absolutely, yes. And I will say this. Whatever is in the dark will always come out in the light. It will be exposed, and the truth will come to pass, no matter what, because good rules over evil. I will most guaranteed, and I am a big believer in God. I put my faith in him, and I know I serve a mighty God, and he is behind me 100%, and he will give me justice for my child. So no matter what.
Terria Walters, Tom Anderson Show.
Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you. I walked out this morning and I wrote down this song. I just can't remember who to send it to. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days.
This is the Tom Anderson Show on the Talk of the Valley, KVNT 92.5 FM and 1020 AM, and on Hot Talk, KOAN 95.1 FM and 1080 AM. Want to join the conversation? In the Valley, dial 357-5868. In Anchorage, 569-1080. Good morning, Alaska. Here's Tom Anderson.
Terria Walters lost her son Christopher this week. She just told her story, and if there was a dry eye in the audience, I'm shocked. There certainly wasn't one here in the studio. Terria, you are a champion, and I believe you are a righteous person to your core. You told me before the show started that this interview isn't just about the memory and loss of your son. It isn't just about catching the perpetrator, or tors in plural, should there be more than one, and you will be caught, as she warned, guaranteed. But this is also about hope, and it's also about making a difference. And you guys talked on the break about what you plan to do, named after your son, opening a new transitional housing facility out here when this case, whether it comes to closure or not, to make a difference. You're that proactive. And to me, that's profound. It shows your integrity and your character. Tell me about that. What would happen if you opened something of that nature? What if you got funding? If we, let's say, did an internet GoFundMe for a business like that, how would you set that up? Would it be comparable to your Anchorage facility? And would you target folks in the Mat-Su that want to live here and transition with support?
Well, absolutely. Like, I would do the same thing that I'm doing in Anchorage. Resources for people coming out of prison. And most definitely I would do it in the honor my son, Christopher Seaman Transitional House. The thing is, my desire would be, God willing, that some good come out of this situation. This is a serious tragedy, but I believe that God uses everything for good. That whatever was meant to devastate and harm is going to be turned into something good. I want to honor my son's memory in encouraging other people that, hey, I know that you're suffering with an addiction issue. How can I help? Let's try to get you, some help. And I encourage anybody, even right now, before even this house is opened, get in contact with me. Let me, I totally understand your situation. I totally get what you're going through. And I tell this to everybody. Hey, I don't judge you. I know you have an issue. I know you have a problem. I know that you don't like being like this, because nobody likes being like that. My son even told me, I don't like being like this. I hate having an addiction issue. I don't like being an addict. I don't like that I feel this way. I know most guaranteed the individual that did this probably has an addiction issue too. And I don't think it was just one person. I think it's several people who were involved, just because of the things that I've heard and in terms of the case. And I also have my friends that
well, you're friends with your son's friends, and the same circles run together. The odds of this being a stranger just indiscriminately picking your son in Big Lake in his vehicle are ridiculous.
Right.
And clearly it was with malice and it was intentional, and drug related is your suspicion. I'm sure the state troopers feel the same way. You know what? Once they get caught, they will go to prison, they will pay, and you don't seek retribution, do you? You seek betterment. Retribution meaning, I'm going to go after them, I'm going to go beyond arresting them. You seek, I think, making a difference in the community, and that's what makes you so beautiful as a person, with your faith and with your perspective on life, because you've been there. I see you making lemonade out of lemons, and I see you as someone who will always champion. You're kind of a Joan of Arc. You're out there saying, I will make a difference even if I'm one person, but it doesn't sound like you're one person. I'll bet you beyond your friends here and others, a lot of people support this idea, don't they? Not just of achieving sobriety, but of rehabilitation and of treatment, versus what you just said. What you just said about the people who did this. They did it because of drugs, and anybody that needs help, that might seek your counsel or that might seek your treatment facility, their lives could turn out bad like this too. I mean, this isn't the first fatality, is it?
No.
In the drug world.
No, absolutely not. This happens quite often, and I'm going to tell you, there has to be a solution. We have an epidemic coming up. Arresting somebody and putting somebody in jail when they have an addiction issue is not the answer.
And it doesn't remedy them, does it? Because you've met people, they get out, and what do they, first thing they probably say is, my God, I have an urge for the drug I was on, I presume. I mean, I don't think they're telling law enforcement that, but I'm sure that they're seeking your counsel saying, what do I do?
Well, the thing is a person must get, what needs to happen is there has to be a solution. It costs $50,000 a year to house somebody in prison, and it costs $50 million a year just to run Goose Creek alone. So the issue is there has to be a solution. You can't just put somebody in jail and expect that they're going to be corrected without giving them a transformation in their thinking. There has to be some form of renewing of their mind.
Whether that be faith-based or for their family or for their community or for their kids. And you mentioned Goose Creek on the break. It's full, isn't it? It's full. They just built it and it's already full.
Yes.
And I presented the news 2 days ago. They did an analysis of all the prisons and all the statistics, and it's horrifying.
Yes.
And already they're looking at building 2 new ones because we don't have enough room. And your point is, let's backtrack. Are there that many rapists and pedophiles and murderers in there? No, it's drug related.
It's most everybody that's in jail is either in there on a PTRP for having a dirty UA or a drug related charge. A lot of them are addicts, possession charges. So basically what needs to happen is why are you building another prison? Why don't you take this $50,000 that you want to spend on one inmate a year, build a facility that is going to treat the addict mind? I mean, there has to be a solution here, because putting people in jail is not working. It is making it worse. And I most guaranteed people that don't understand about incarceration or putting people in jail, there's dope in jail too. People get it in there, whether it's been brought in by a correctional officer, a dirty correctional officer,
Look at New York, the two escapees both murdered someone. One murdered a cop, one murdered his boss and dismembered him. They got out, a month ago, and they said they had tools brought in, they had drugs brought in, they were having sex with personnel. I'm not saying it's like that in Alaska, but your point is, and isn't a bastion sacrosanct in a prison. There's corruption there too.
Oh, absolutely. It happens here too.
Real quick, do you think the legalization of marijuana infringes on this, or that alcohol is legal, or would you say no, it is about choices? Some people have a propensity to abuse and others don't.
Well, this is what I say. There's a difference between, like, in my opinion, there are people that are responsible drinkers, and then there's people that are irresponsible.
Agreed.
There's some people that should not be drinking, and then there's some people that they're okay with having a beer with their meal.
Would you say the same with marijuana? Some can control and some can't.
Right. And then there's also individuals that have been prescribed medication for cancer. They're taking it right. But then there's also other individuals that doctor shop, that go out and get
opiates, psychotropic medicines, and they abuse it. And that's what's scary. Now, if someone wants to give information, your son lost his life this week, whether it's one person or multiple people know. She just said, as a mother, she implores you to come forward, to call the state troopers. The number is 745-2131. You can call the Alaska State Troopers right now. I guarantee it. I'm sure a trooper is listening to this program to see if someone calls in, if someone knows something. 745-2131. You can call the state troopers and you can confidentially give information. I mean, you don't have to broadcast it. You don't have to post it on Facebook. Call law enforcement. Don't you agree? So that they can catch these people. If people are posting or giving their opinions in blog sites or on comment lines, that just tips off the person who committed this crime, and we don't want to do that. And in your case, you're going to start a Facebook page in your son's honor and Christopher's honor. We're going to post a YouTube video of this, and we hope people share it. And then you will go forward with his memoriam and his funeral next week, I presume?
Yeah, Wednesday at 6:00. So if anybody's interested, we will be at Change Point Church. We will also have a celebration of life for my son. Anybody that's knows my son or is interested in just participating, even as a stranger, you're more than welcome to come. We are having a potluck, so come on by.
Terria Walters, you are a hero in my book, and I am so, so deeply sorry for your loss, and I hope this interview made a difference, and God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Tom Anderson Show. Have a good weekend.